Well, time for another episode of Dashing Dan's Sporting Adventures, and we always, at the start of the week, have a look at the AFL Round, and this week, of course, was Round 5, and we have a segment that we call View from the Outer, and we have a brand new sponsor to Sporto, the best Italian food you could ever eat, where Italy comes alive on a plate, forged from Nonna's kitchen, made with southern soul. They say some restaurants feed you, we bring you home. Every dish at Desporto is a love letter to southern Italy, artisan crafted from the freshest seasonal produce, built on recipes passed down through generations and served with the warmth of family around a shared table. And they have a number of restaurants in the western and northwestern suburbs of Melbourne: Williamstown, Yarraville, Essendon. They've got the kiosk on the beach at Williamstown, Gelato Desporto, and Bottega, which is a wine bar to Sporto. And tell them when you go there, Dan sent you. My guest tonight, I know him very well from the Mornington Peninsula, a great coach in the Mornington Peninsula Football League and also in the Southern Football League. He's won premierships at Bentley. He got very close to winning a premiership at Somerville. And I won't hold this against him. He's a mad keen Essendon supporter, and I caught a game of footy with him on the weekend, and he was fired up after the Bombers ended their 17-game losing streak. Brad Canavan, welcome to Dashing Dan's Sporting Adventures.
This is unreal, Dan. Thanks for having me on the show. And, I just thought I'd crank up my backdrop a bit there. I went in and had a bit of a play, and one of the backgrounds was like this plain brick wall, and I was like, nah, not having that. We're going full Bomber kit. And I've pulled out Dyson Heppel because I reckon it was the last time we had a win. So Heps is just, I dust him off, and he's ready to go. And outside of that, Dan, I had toasted ham and cheese muffins for dinner. I wouldn't mind you sending some of that Italian you just read about, please.
I'll do that. It's got the best pizzas, the best pasta, and they've even got a Dan Lonigan special. That's how often I go there. They've got the Il Gambero pizza, which is prawns and zucchini, which is my favourite vegetable, Bradley, and I can't eat prawns because I'm anaphylaxis. So I came up with a special dish, which is zucchini, ham, potato, and pumpkin. It is magnificent. But every time I've eaten there, it's been better and better and better. And a shout out to Antoinetta and Claude, who own the business, their sons Lorenzo and also Anthony, and among the staff, because I spend most of my time at Williamstown, Cecile, and also Harriet, along with Georgia and Stefan. Let's get into it. We'll get to the Bombers shortly. We'll start from last night and go to Thursday night. St Kilda won their second game of the season. Port came firing up in the third quarter. To me, Port in trouble, and the Saints, even though they're spent big, I reckon their kids are a bit better than we give them credit for.
Yeah, mate, I thought it was an interesting game. Like the weather was annoying all weekend, and obviously they're playing on some different grounds, that Barossa ground and the Norwood ground. So when I drilled down into some of my my key performance indicators, looked at some specific stats that I thought I'd just run through all the games. But look, the Saints obviously interesting mob because they obviously splashed the cash. We hadn't seen the needle move, so to speak, with some of these big name recruits. Are they A graders? Or are they just very good B graders? But I think, like you said, Dan, some of their kids, now they're getting into that 30, 40, 50, 60 game region, are going to start to, I think they're the ones who are going to propel them maybe even more than the recruits. And that's maybe odd to some people for me to say that, but if they get that growth from within and that growth from underneath, I think that's what's going to propel this St Kilda group. And look, the other thing, Dan, about the Saints, they went and splashed the cash, and that's fine. They were going to take time to gel. I mean, you can come out the next season and have a team that you've hardly recruited, maybe one or two and a couple of new kids, and it always takes time to get things molded or gelled together before you start to see it clicking. And I like what I saw from the Saints the other night. So 81-67, stoppages. They win stoppage hit-outs. They win clearances. They win centre clearances. They break even at outside the inside stoppage. They win outside. Their tackle count, as we know under Ross, they win that. And the area that in tough conditions, Dan, Efficiency overall with disposal 71% to 66. So that 5% difference there. And then efficiency inside 50, 51 to 46. So on a tough night and in tough conditions, small percentages equal big things.
And it was a terrific performance in the end. Do you think, though, Ross Lyon goes back to norm and just defends too much when he could attack more, when he knows his team's under the pump as they were in the third quarter?
It's a great question, Dan. Look, I love Ross Lyon as a coach, and I love his resume is outstanding. And I think if you're going to build a fresh team, you'd go with someone like a Ross Lyon who's going to teach them to defend, and the mechanics and the mechanisms of good defense. And do they default to that too quickly? I think yes is the answer sometimes, and you'd like to see them while momentum's on their side and while things are going well. Hey, keep attacking and put that extra goal on the board, put that extra 2 or 3 on the board, a little bit like Hawthorn do. They really get 2 or 3 goals up and they keep going. So they need to sort of look at some of those top sides and say, what does Hawthorn do? And Sydney, when they're a few goals up, and they feel the opposition coming at them, they attack again or they drop instantly back into a defensive mode. The answer is no. So it's probably an area still that Corey Enright, who works on a lot of their connection work and ball movement and attack and defense stuff, is probably still tinkering with. But I get the feeling once you're a defensive coach, Dan, you still fall back on it. And I'm like that myself. I'll still fall back to defensive capacity. When I feel the momentum swing or a bit of heat coming from the opposition.
Port Adelaide, how are you feeling about them? Zach Butters might be in a bit of trouble. It's he said, she said. I think they'll back the umpires that he had a bit of a go at the umpire, Nick Foote, who actually worked for a betting agency. When Butters is saying not who's paying you for that, he actually reckons that he said what you're paying that for. So it's basically he said, she said, but to itself.
They are, but if you dive into the stats on the weekend, they weren't far off. All their stoppage stats were just narrow defeats by 1 or 2, and they broke even on stoppage clearance as well. So some of their stats around stoppages was pretty good on the weekend. And look, the tackle count was down on a day when you needed to be physical and tackle. And I always talk about tackling at our local level, and I think it still stands true in AFL. It's a really simple indicator of your pressure and your willingness and your effort, and being able to stick your tackles as well. So, look, I wrote, I think, on my little AFL wrap on Facebook today that they're going to be on the roller coaster this year. But if you like roller coasters, I think you'll enjoy following Port this year, because I think they're going to have moments where you go, wow, they're all right. And then you're going to have moments where you're like, oh, get me off this roller coaster this year. So, Butters obviously is a star. Horn Francis was good. And, one of my favourites off half back with that sweet left foot, Kane Farrell, mate. So, they've got some good players there. And I think, barring injury, that they could be pesky around that middle part of the year. I feel like they could be sort of like 3-3 and 3-4 and just annoying. Like you look at the calendar and go, right, I've got to go to Port Adelaide and try and beat them, and they've got capacity. So I've got to watch on them.
Alira was very good. He did make up that kick, which cost them a goal, but I thought he was very good behind the ball. GWS found some form. He did say to me off air, you reckon they could really mount a challenge now that they've got good players back? Cadman played his first game. He'll miss again because of concussion protocols. String is so important to that team. Oliver's playing pretty well at the moment. So great effort by the Giants. Richmond, of course, way to go. And I think the Jungle Drums are beating a little bit with some supporters at the Tigers. Brad, for Adam Uze's 7 wins from 51, is he a senior coach?
It's a good question, Dan. I'm good mates with a former Melbourne teammate of his, and he has big raps on him. Yeah.
Mm.
He's got big raps on him, and I think he came in when the group was at a really interesting time because they've recruited Hopper and Taranto on those big 7-year deals. Still got a couple of premiership stars hanging about, and then they head to the draft. And I reckon, on face value, time will tell, but I reckon they've nailed a lot of those draft picks. So I'd still be being patient with him, but I was just talking about Port being on the roller coaster. I think if you're a Richmond supporter and you don't like roller coasters, I'd get off now and just enjoy maybe a round of golf on the occasional weekend, and maybe not go and watch as many games this year if I was Richmond. But look, one of the stats that was glaring for the Tigers on the weekend, Dan, efficiency inside 50 was only 39% compared to GWS at 65. So, but they did win clearances and they won centre clearance. So, and they won the tackle count. So there's little signs there. And as a coach who's probably he's feeling the pressure, I'd imagine. They're the types of little wins he's looking for, and he's taken them back to review, and he's saying, "Hey boys, we won this. So I mean, they only won total efficiency in general disposal efficiency by 1%. So I think it's connection between the midfield and the forwards, and then the forwards growing up some of those skinny boys. And I'd like to see some of those smalls do a bit more. I think they're a bit flashy. Find some consistency.
They've got to find some form in that area, don't they? Yeah. GWS, what do you think, Brad? I mean, they've won 2, lost 3. It hasn't been a great start to the year, but I reckon they've got one of the best lists in the comp when they're all up and going. And as I mentioned, they're starting to get a few back. Buckley's another one, a big part of their defensive pillar. And they looked good on the weekend, didn't they? It wasn't, of course.
Well, I've got the Giants as a danger team if they get that list somewhat healthy. I mean, I still think it's one of the best lists in the competition. I love their coach because the way I coach down, I'm pretty animated and emotional and pretty demanding of the teams that I've coached in the past. So when I see Kingsley, I'm like, all right, he's into it, and he's passionate about it. He doesn't want to waste a week of training, and when these boys turn up sometimes on Saturday and don't give effort. So love the coach. Love their list. And I looked at 2 categories, Dan, on the AFL website. I had a look at total disposal. They ranked number 1. So that just shows they get their hands on the footy plenty of times, and that's a danger because the next bracket of teams are all top teams: Hawks, Swans, Lions, Freo, Dogs, Cats, and Suns. So they rank number 1 in disposals. And then in the fantasy points, which I'm always interested in seeing how the fantasy points goes up, they actually they sit 4th. You got the Hawks, Cats, and Lions ahead of them, who we all think can win the flag. Then you got the Swans below them, and then if you look, the fantasy points, you got the Dogs and Freo at 9 and 12. So whatever you read into fantasy points, the Giants are sitting right up there in 4th position. I think healthy, very dangerous.
Well, Cadman was great in the weekend. His first game back for the season, but they lose him concussion on the side alongside and string forward, don't they?
Yeah, he's a smooth mover and he's a good connecting piece. And the other big point of difference for Cadman, he's a left footer. So backmen really have to think about his leading patterns when they're trying to defend him. And then because he's a lefty, it gives the blokes up the field a different kicking angle as well. So he's a really good connection piece. And as we've seen, he's become a really good finisher. So hopefully he can get back in that side because he's a number 1 pick and very talented.
This is Dash Hand Sporting Adventures view from the art of respected Brad Canavan has joined me to look at round 5 of the competition. It was Gather Round, played in Adelaide. Unfortunately, conditions not great. We're here for Desporto, and you sponsor magnificent Italian restaurants and also the Kiosk Williams Gelato Desporto at Yarraville, Pega Desporto, the bar at Yarraville. So you're pulling up a chair for dinner, grabbing your favourite pizza on the way home, or gathering the whole crew for something special. Desporto is where the back charm of Italy's south meets style of the north. Familiar, generous, unforgettable. Come join our family. The best way to enjoy Desporto is together. Now, Geelong and West Coast. Geelong were too strong for the Eagles. They had a few out. Blitzarves, who was rested so he could play his 300th game, always against the Bulldogs. Someone from Geelong plays a milestone game, and Paddy Dangerfield was also out. But just a bit too clinical, weren't they, Brad?
Yeah, I think they just did what they had to do. There was just, West Coast. I'm bullish on West Coast, but the Cats have. I get the feeling it's just a hunch, Dan, that they've got Buckley in, so they're going to be tinkering and trying some new things under Buckley as their midfield coach. And I suspect that even though they made the grand final last year, it was probably on the back of Paddy Dangerfield just being a beast in that prelim. I reckon their approach to the back end of the year now that it's longer is going to be different. The approach to the start of the year and how they block up their season. If they get to 2-2 and then they're 3-3, maybe 4-2, knowing that they got those home games, I still think they're very, very dangerous. I've got a major concern for the Cats, though, Dan. And you'll know what it is when I say the name Rowan Marshall. This is why they went after Rowan Marshall, Dan. Yeah, he should be there. The Saints should have cashed in. If Rowan Marshall was at Geelong, I'd be super big on them. Right at the moment, we've got them in the top half dozen, but I'd have them in the top 2 or 3 with Rowan Marshall rucking down there.
Just on that, Brad, I mean, as you said, he wanted to go. It's not working with the running at the moment, is it?
No, it's not. It's look, they say, Marshall played centre half forward as a kid and a junior, but it's a long time ago. Centre half forward in the modern game is basically non-existent, and he's been a ruckman for 10 years. So their argument sort of, for me, had a few crosses through it, and I just think a lot of these AFL clubs, they put time and effort into guys, and we understand that, and they develop. But then what they do, they overrate players. And I just think it was a perfect time to cash in and say, we can get him off the books and he can go and enjoy 3 or 4 years or maybe even 5 down at Geelong, because I think it'll come up again. I think the Cats would be crazy not to go after him again, because I think they see as a gap in their list.
Well, Mitch Edwards is rucking, and I thought it was okay in patches against Hawthorn. And again, was okay against West Coast. Just on the Eagles, I suppose the positive was they turned around a 128-point drubbing, which no doubt Andrew McWalter was hoping wouldn't happen again after they'd won their previous 2 early in this season, to at least be competitive against the Cats. They can take something out of that, can't they?
Really competitive. I'm bullish on those 6 or 7 good kids they got in there. He's an interesting one. Williams. He came into the rucky. I think he ranked as maybe their number 1 player on the day. Bailey Williams in the rucket. I always look at him and think he's a little bit undersized, but he's 6'7" and he's pretty mobile. So they did win the hitouts. He won the hitouts because he pretty much played in there all day, and he gave his midfield a pretty good chance to break even. I mean, they lost centre clearances pretty convincingly and clearances in general, but they won around the ground in general stoppages around the ground, Dan. So, I think, look, the drafts helped them big time. Dersman's going to be a star. I'm on the Eagle train a little bit. I'm looking at Eagles versus Bombers, Dan. I think I might get on the plane and go and get some sunshine.
Well, you'll love it. It's always pretty nice over in Perth. I've only ever seen, when I lived there, I saw rain, monsoonal rain, and I thought night, my wife and I at the time, when I was living over there, thought our house was going to wash away. That's where the rain was. But luckily, Brad, it doesn't rain very often. Talking of rain, there was a bit of rain in the Hawthorn Bulldogs game on Saturday night, which was tipped as the match of the round. The Dogs were undefeated. I still reckon they're the worst team ever to be undefeated. Maybe I'm a bit harsh on the Bulldogs. And they're also a team that lack a bit of depth. And another aspect that concerns me about the Western Bulldogs is when they lose a key player, they seem to fall apart. Just one key player. Most other teams can replace that, but without Tim English, the rucks for Hawthorn, Reeves and also Meek had a field day. Nothing against the kid Emmett, but 64-17, hitouts to advantage, 21-3. And John Newcomb always plays well against the Dogs, and Sam Mitchell owns Luke Beveridge in the coach's box, doesn't he?
Well, he does, but the interesting thing about Sam and Bevo, is they both like to spin the magnets. They will try some things. They're real ideas coaches, and I love that about both of them. Sometimes, probably over the journey, you feel like Bevo's spun the magnets a little bit too much, and it's upset the doggies. But he seems to have stabilised a little bit this year. I agree with you. I think their list is thin. And I was going to ask you, Dan, is there a team in the comp that need their ruckman more than the doggies?
Oh, absolutely not. I mean, Smith hasn't played yet. He's been on the list a couple of years. We talked about Emmett. Look, he's new. He's only just starting. I mean, I look at the Bulldogs. They've got 6 top liners. They've got 7 good players, and the rest are either in the developmental stage or the jury's out on them, and there are half a dozen who can't play. Now, with the greatest respect, a couple of the commentators were saying, well, they might have to rob Peter to pay Paul, put Love in the ruck against Geelong this week. There's some doubt over Norton with a hand injury. Darcy may have to play there. So they bring back Buslinger, who deserves another opportunity, or Ryan Gardner. Now, Ryan Gardner played against the Hawks last year, first game of the year, only game of the year, and looked like rabbits in the headlights. He's never been quite good enough. And
I remember that game. You were very critical.
Yes. I mean, it wasn't just me or other supporters. It was actually the media that were very critical of him. I just think they lack depth. They had 11 players who played 50 games or less on the weekend, and some of those boys weren't ready. And the Hawks have got a great record against the Dogs, and I don't think they've got a weakness anywhere, Brad.
The Hawks, they look primed, don't they? They're just everything. Their list itself looks really good. I mean, they'll lose Chol for a little bit, but then they go maybe bring Deer in, and he's a good replacement. The interesting one for me on the weekend is when Chol went off, I thought that Mitchie Lewis really stood up. So there's always you see those moments. Did he have to stand up? Yes, he did. But you wonder, he thought, right, Choley's out here, I'm going to get a bit more footy. And then you see what he can really produce. Question for you, Dan, where's Nick Watson go in that draft if you were redrafting his draft? I mean, besides being a super talented, clever small forward, he's just drifting up the ground now, playing a little midfield. Footy IQ on high. He and Ginnivan, they get little knocks on him for some of that swagger stuff. But boy, oh boy, every other supporter and every other team would happily have them in their team right now.
Well, the Dogs were all over him, but he went with Hawthorn the pick before the Dogs. Now, people say, why didn't they go Nick Watson? They would have if he had got to them. I mean, we're critical, aren't we, Brad, of teams that make mistakes. I mean, St Kilda went Jack Billing before Marcus Bontempelli, and
Yikes.
Melbourne went Jimmy Toumpas before the Bulldog pair of Jake Stringer and Jack McRae. They're just two that come to mind. And look what Melbourne did back in 2009. They went Tom Scully, who went to GWS very quickly. Jack Trengove got injured, and they also went Gisberts. Pick 3 in that draft, a fellow called Dustin Martin of Richmond. Now, all clubs get it wrong, but I think Nick Watson is probably number 1 now. Maybe they just thought he was a little bit restricted in that he was just a small forward, but he's got more tricks than that, hasn't he?
Many more tricks. They're solid down back. They're becoming a little bit more versatile, flexible in that middle third, which then it makes it harder to coach against. And then you've got the crafty veteran up front, and then just this mosquito fleet floating around that connect the whole ground up for them. They are super dangerous. Their efficiency once they're inside 50 on the weekend was 10% better than the Dogs, and that makes a huge difference in crappy conditions. And the other one that goes under the radar, I know people we talk about him on and off for Hawthorn, is Hardwick. He was best on for them on the weekend. He's an absolute beast. He can stop blokes. He's intimidating, he's brave, but he's also skilled. And, if they're desperate, they swing him forward just for something else, and he usually kicks a couple.
Can Hawthorn win it, Brad?
Oh, 100. Yeah, absolutely. 100%. Yeah, that pains me to say that too, Dan.
Yes, I know that. Oh. They're definitely the best Victorian side by a fair way. I think Geelong are right up there when they get going. The Dogs have got a lot of work to do. I mean, they've got a few injuries now, and I can see them with their tough run. Geelong at Cardinia Park. 2 games at Docklands where they play well, Sydney and Freo, even though Freo beat them there last year. They could easily be 4-4 with their injuries if Norton is out for a little bit. Butterick, as I said, he might be sidelined as well. Not sure when English is back, not sure when Libber is back, and some concerns about Richards with his ankle. And there's a lot of their top liners. And as I say, without them, the depth is tested and they're in trouble.
The crystal ball will be this, Dan. The Dogs will slip a little bit with the injuries, and they'll be, like you said, 4-4 or 5-4 or somewhere around that mark. But there'll be still a lot of talk about them in the media about, if they can get fit and healthy and Bevo can get them all in the park together, the Dogs will still be a team that people don't want to play. How many years do we keep hearing that? How many years do we have to, we've heard it for the last couple of years. And if it happens again this year, it's like, oh, here we go again. It's that same sort of rhetoric about them. They're good enough, but, are they good enough? Interesting watching the Dogs now with this few injuries.
Oh, I agree. As you know, I'm a very keen Bulldog supporter, but I'm 3/4 glass empty about them. But I've always been like that. Brad Canavan's my guest. Great to have him on board. He won premierships at Bentley, one of the best local football coaches going around, got a magnificent strategic mind. And it was great working with him on the weekend in the MP FNL in dreadful conditions to kick off the season for a lot of clubs. And we're here for our new sponsor, Desporto, well-known Italian restaurant. They've actually got a restaurant at Essendon next to the famous Windy Hill, also Yarraville, which is next door to the cinema there, and Williamstown, along with the kiosk in Williamstown Beach. And their motto is, where Italy comes alive on a plate. And they also say, Italians live life through their hands, and you'll trust every moment of it. You can dine in, take away, group bookings, and they also look after functions and catering. And a number, Brad, too, of the football clubs, including the Bulldogs, actually eat their food after training sessions. So they've got a huge business going there, Claude and Antoinetta. Sydney, they're right up there, aren't they? Too good for the Gold Coast, who worry me a bit at the moment.
Sydney, sensational, mate. It's a funny one because they play on the Sydney ground, which is small, and then they head to Norwood, and it's like, well, it's home away from home, and they're tough, and they're well drilled. They've got their stars, and then they've got that group of soldiers, some of those unknown sort of blokes, and then they've slipped a couple of absolute unknown blokes in. And if you said 2 or 3 names and said, you know who he plays football for, and they'd say, no idea who Riley Bice is.
Yes.
You know what I mean? They got these type of guys. He's a beautiful left footer. I think Coxie's obviously he had his challenges last year, but the fact that they were able to hand him the keys in that process with Longmire finishing up just showed you that they thought, or they knew that he was the right next coach for this group, and I think he's highly respected. And you only have to look at their stats. Their efficiency across the day was better. Their stoppage work was tremendous all day. And how's this stat, Dan? They win 100-68 versus the Suns, who are a contender. But the tackle count was 97-52 Sydney. So for me, that is just such a telling stat to say, by the way, we'll beat you by 6 goals. And how about we pound you by 45 tackles as well?
Yeah, magnificent performance. Did Dean Cox need the run last year as a senior coach?
Well, absolutely. Like, I mean, your first time doing it is, it's frightening, to be honest. And I still remember, stepping out to, what was my first gig out at Keysborough, and I had all these grand plans. And by the end of the year, oh boy, the injuries and dealing with all the external stuff. It's not just coaching, Dan. It's dealing with everything. And even since, my first gig in 2010, how it's evolved as a coach now. A very challenging year for him, but that also builds his resilience, and he's able to lean on good mentors. And I think what you see now, the other thing I'm noticing from him, he seems a touch calmer. He's got a bit of an edge to him. He just seems to have calmed a little bit. I mean, winning helps that, of course, but I think he's calmed a little bit. But I can still see a nice demanding side. And players like that. But, yeah, Sydney are going to be there at the pointy end, and they are super dangerous.
And, of course, they've got about 6 or 8 good depth players as well. So, unlike the Bulldogs, their depth runs pretty deep. Gold Coast, to me, their depth doesn't run as deep. I was a bit critical, even though they got Christian Petrarca in, who should return this week. Jamara Ugle-Hagan, don't worry about him at the moment. He's got a lot of work to do before he gets an opportunity to play senior footy, I'm hearing. But they lost Ainsworth, who's been a regular senior player. They lost Fiorini to Essendon, who's been a regular senior player. and they lost Butterick to the Bulldogs, a regular senior player. So there's their depth being eroded. And the last 2 weeks, they've been pretty disappointing, haven't they?
Yeah, they're a funny read because I reckon I looked on the tab account and I think they were favourites of the flag about a month ago. Yes. And I thought, let's wait a little bit. And I love Dimmer as a coach, and we admire what he did at Richmond, and you can see a lot of the Richmond traits in his group, and that took a bit of time for him to build as well. And then it suddenly went boom. So I think once the penny drops, they've got to find some consistency. I mean, Rao back in for his second game. Last week, people were bagging him, and this week he came out and he was just a beast. So, but I'm a bit like you too. I'm like, travelling away from home, still a few little gaps. I'm holding on to them hard, Dan. I'm holding hard. But I reckon Dimmer would have a few little question marks there as well. But, top 6.
Sam Flanders is another depth player who's landed at St Kilda, again, probably on bigger money than he deserved, but he's another one that would have been handy for the Suns. What about Jed Walter? How many clubs do you think might be after him? I saw him against Melbourne. He doesn't do enough, but some of the things he does are spectacular. Took a mark in defence for Gold Coast, kicked this goal, which wasn't allowed because it wasn't advantage, where he just swung around the body and was like shelling peas, picking the ball up at his bootlaces, then took a lovely, strong contested mark in the forward line. Very high draft pick, can play, but he hasn't put it together yet, has he?
Well, he's had limited opportunities. And the other thing, Dan, like we just talked about Mitch Lewis at Hawthorn. Yeah. Mitch is probably with Charlie in there and Gunston. He's playing third banana. And at the moment, Walter's probably third banana. And at times they don't need him in because they have King, who gets most of the footy inside 50. Then they got, is it the young fella Reed? Is he the young ruckman?
That's right.
So they're utilising him. So I'd be really interested if my club rang his management and said, hey, would Jed be interested in wearing red and black? Because I think if it was just, say, he and Caddy, and he's the ball in, was able to see more of him. Because like I said, there's a bit of a highlights package there. I would think you'll see more of him with more opportunity. So, he's in a bit of he's a bit stuck at the moment, isn't he?
He is. Collingwood, I know, are looking at him. We'll get to Collingwood shortly. They don't have a forward
line.
Well,
they're a team that should absolutely go after him.
Absolutely. No doubt about that. Brisbane and North Melbourne. That was played at the Barossa Valley. Beautiful part of the world. Lovely ground out there. Brisbane still haven't played at the Adelaide Oval in the 4 times that we've had gather around. That is criminal for a team that have been right up near the top of the ladder and won consecutive flags. They did enough, Brisbane. I thought North were pretty competitive. They've found one, though, in Cooper Trenbath, Brad. He is a star. That screamer in the goal squeeze is going to be a highlight package, Trenbath, isn't he?
Oh, he's going to be unbelievable. But, Dan, you know what caught my attention from this game?
What?
The North Melbourne jumper.
Yeah, I liked it.
Just talking outside of, like, footy stuff.
Yeah.
But the jumper's important. I just thought that gave great identity to their football club. It had a little bit of darkness to it. It was a bit mysterious. It had the kangaroo sort of woven into it. If I'm the North Melbourne marketing department, we're going to be putting that on and wearing that a lot more because I think that's a seller. Just going off topic for a moment, Dan. But, Trenbath, unreal. O'Sullivan, they've got some picks there. One of my favourite, Georgie Boy. Love him. But you look at some of their just looking at my stats here. I've lost me. Where's me North Melbourne gone? I've lost me North Melbourne, Dan. You've jumped games on me. I've messed up.
Good to see you nice and organised, Brad. We're going to get to the Bombers in just a second. But I've got a question. I mean, they've added Allen and they've added Draper. They kicked 5 goals between them for Brisbane. McCarthy's back. Coleman is back. I mean, they are just super strong. We talk about depth, and, I mean, they have the best depth in the comp, I would have thought, by a long way, and every other team aspires to have what Brisbane has, don't they?
Well, you know what I did the other day, Dan? I channeled my inner Sammy boy at Hawthorn. I went on to chat and I said, Chat, describe the Brisbane Lions playing style for me. And, chaotic and ball in motion, speed on ball, not always pretty, trust each other, blah, blah, blah. And I looked at their stats and their efficiency and inside 50 efficiency was absolutely woeful on the weekend. They lost both those areas to North. Then I was like thinking about their game plan and how they move the footy, and it's really chaotic, and it's at times a beautiful mess. And they just have quality all over the park, and they're just so good to watch. They won the tackle count, which is, like I've mentioned, for me, it's the number one indicator of effort and basic pressure and defence. So, stoppage work was really good. I think Draper, although not elite, I think he gives them great energy. He's a real come with me, bit of X factor, a bit of swagger, and that's what the Bombers miss from him, opposed to his skill level, so to speak. And then the Oscar Allen in. What people don't think about often, Dan, is when you bring a guy like Oscar Allen in, it's the ricochet effect that goes down. So the next defender, he takes a great defender, maybe the number one. So then your next forward now gets the number 2 defender, and then the next bloke gets the number 3 defender. So you get this positive ricochet effect for bringing in quality players. So 3 Pete beckons.
Oh, I think it does. They dropped their first 2. The first game was a tight one against the Dogs. They had so many injuries and suspensions, and we know Sydney are going to be a good side. The last 3 weeks have been very good. Does Eric Hipwood get back in that side?
Doubtful.
Because they'll be coming after him then, won't they, Brad? I mean, Collingwood certainly will.
How old's Eric now? He had 1 or 2 knee recos, 27 years old, a couple of premierships.
I'd have to check that out. But he didn't play in the second one last year because of injury. He played in the first one, though.
Yeah, that's right. So, I don't know. He might be, when you write down your list, you say, number 1, we want Ben King, then we want Jed Walder, and then he might fall down into, pick like their own mini draft of key forwards in the competition that they could potentially go after. Because the worst thing Collingwood fans would want to see is they go and get an Eric Hipwood, and he's not at the back end of his career, but he's never really lit it up. And they went and got McStay, who's done the same. He was always a bit part piece, and he hasn't really exploded for them, McStay. And I feel like Hipwood could be similar.
28 years old, Eric Hipwood, turns 29 in September. I still reckon if he gets fit, he's got at least another 4 years left, hasn't he?
Yeah. I think there's some longevity there, but he's not the answer. I'll tell you who I had as the answer, and because they build their game plan around Dacos, and they build their game plan around Darcy down back. So it's hard to take Darcy out of their we've diverted a little bit to Collingwood, but it's hard to take Darcy out of their system because he's so important back. But I thought if Darcy's fit, then you've got to send Howe forward, or vice versa. Leave Howe back and send Darcy forward to at least, because I think they're great markers for one, and 2, they're respected in that group. So they're going to fire a lot of footy at them.
Well, they missed a couple of set shots, didn't they? We'll go to that game now, seeing we've started talking about them. I mean, they probably should have won the game. I thought they were outstanding. It was a very low-scoring game. It was a tough game. Their defence, as usual, great. Their forward line just doesn't connect. I mean, Schultz missed one from 25. McStay missed one that could have iced the game. And then Freo were able to find a way because their defence is so good. It's as good as Hawthorn's defence, Fremantle, isn't it? I mean, they know how to win the game, win the close games. They've won 2 in Adelaide by a combined total of 4 points. So they're the games that get you in the top 4 at the end of the season, don't they? When you win the close ones.
Yeah, win the close ones, win ugly, grab the 4 points. And look, I thought they were a touch lucky to win it. And Collingwood had a chance there to ice it, like you just said, with those 2 boys missing. They're just sodas. And for AFL blokes to miss those, it's just so disappointing. I've got one for you. Look at Collingwood's tackle count. And this is part of that defensive setup they had. They had 92 tackles to 63. So that's allowed Collingwood to hang in that game for so long, and they lost to Goey. I love the game of Quaynor, Dan, and I know you read my raps, and I reckon it's nearly time, and Floyd is a bit of an experimenter, to pull him out of that back group and let him have a blowout in the midfield. See, if he's such a smooth mover, he's a beautiful ball user. I just think he could add a layer to that midfield group that they don't have at the moment. Whether he's brave enough to do it because it breaks down, or he's got someone to replace down there, is the other big question. But I just keep looking at Collins thinking, oh, what do they got? What can they do to, one, we know they defend well, but now we need to connect the ground up from centre forward better for them. And I think Quaynor connects them up really well from D50 to mid-third. But could he be utilised as a smooth-moving, good ball-using centre forward midfielder? I'd love to see that.
Brad Canavan's my guest for Dashing Dan Sporting Adventures. View from the Outer. We are reviewing round 5, Gather Round in Adelaide. The Sporto is our new sponsor, and they've got restaurants, kiosks, and also a gelato store and a wine bar throughout the western suburbs and also the northeastern suburbs at Essendon, next door to the famous Windy Hill, Yarraville, Williamstown, the kiosk in Williamstown Beach, Gelato de Sporto and Bottega de Sporto, which is a bar. Italians, as they say, live life through their hands, and you'll taste every moment of it. The best pasta and pizza going around. Let's get to your beloved Bombers. You and I spoke about it at the local footy on Saturday when they won, and Brad's on fire here. He's got the Essendon backdrop as well. They beat Melbourne, who are probably a little bit flat. They've done it before at Gather Round. They did it, I remember, when they didn't win too many games, when they lost all those players to the very controversial drug scandal, and they had their first win of the year over Melbourne. So they've got a good recent record against the Demons. But I like the players that came in, and Brad's waving his flag. It was a terrific performance, Brad, and it might be the start of something special.
Well, hopefully, Dan. Hopefully, I'm a passionate Bomber fan. Have been for all of my life, and for the past couple of decades, it's just pained me. My poor son, he's 17. He's just he's looking for the out card, but I won't give it to him. My daughter came home at the end of last. She said, "Dad, I think I like the Brisbane Lions." And then I was off in Bali, and then she texted me, "Can you get me some Brisbane Lions jumpers, Dad?" And I'm like, "You've got to be kidding me." I wanted to bring up the Essendon Footy Club and say, this is what you're doing to Essendon families. You are breaking us apart. So hopefully I can get my daughter back on side sometimes, and my son can hang in there for a little bit of success. But look, Dan, I talk about this, and we talked about it last year on our other footy show. The drop-off was there for Melbourne. This was the drop-off game, and I was really worried about Melbourne because they got themselves up for the big game against the Suns, and they performed really well. I ended up having a few dollars each way on the Bombers to cover the line and to win this game. So I just randomly felt that the D's, although they've been exciting and pleasing, that this was a game that was a danger game for Melbourne. Don't know if Kingy would have thought that, but the players had a drop-off. And what most pleased me about Essendon, all right, selection matters. You've got to get your selection right, and there's been massive question marks over our selection to start the year. The integrity of our selection, and that still remains at times because they're obviously trying some things. But if Brad Scott was the catalyst behind two things, Dan, then I'll give him two big ticks. Number one, spinning some magnets and making some moves, big tick. Go in and say, "Hey, Langford, you've been average this year. You either go back to the VFL, or we're going to send you down to play down the back line, pull your finger out." And when we get a response, which I like. And he threw a couple of others. Peter Wright, I've been desperate all year to get him out of the forward line and basically share the load with Blackiston as a 50-50 combo, like Sam Mitchell's doing at Hawthorn. You've got to look at what other teams are doing and say, right, that's working. Maybe we can do that with Blackiston and Wright. So I like that, and that changes your forward structure up, and it freed up our forward line a bit. So if he's the catalyst of some of that, then big ticks to Brad Scott and his coaching group. And the other part that interests me, Dan, is the week before we saw a tinkering with our ball movement pattern. Yeah. So less blasting and less straight up and down the line, so to speak. A little bit more pace off the footy, a little bit more square kicking and 45 kicking, and a little bit more of that keeping off style of ball movement, which for the moment suits our group because we're a developing group. We need to hold that footy a bit more, be a little bit more patient with it rather than blazing. Will that stand the test of time? No, it won't. You'll have to evolve from that ball movement pattern to be a premiership contender. But for the moment, big tick to Brad Scott for selection and positioning, and a big tick for tinkering with that ball movement because it definitely helped us on the weekend. So onwards and upwards. Who are we playing next? Who we got next?
I know you got Collingwood in 2 weeks' time.
Do you know who we got? We've got the Suns away coming off a loss.
That's right.
Yes.
That's a big game, isn't it? I mean, look, Ridley back in so important. We forget how good he is. He won a BNF early on in his career. I think Zach Reid,
wasn't he, 4 years ago?
Was. I think Zach Reid, if he can just stay fit, and there's been a lot of ifs there, but I think he and Ridley can be a great combination. Love the way Archie Roberts is playing. Had over 40 possessions. Parrish isn't the P in the pod anymore, nor is Merritt. And the one that needs to come in the side more regularly, stay in the side. He was a top 5 draft pick, and I think people were writing him off because kicking's not a strength. It's a worry when you're a top 5 draft pick and kicking a fundamental part of the game. Brad isn't a strength, but he's so good on the inside, and that of course is Sardis. He was great in the weekend, wasn't he?
Well, he's an inside. He's an absolute ball magnet, and there's always the knock on kicking. On the Essendon chats, I was saying, well, there's a knock on his kicking, yes, but if you've been watching us for about the last 18 months, we're not a great kicking team. So if you're just going to pinpoint him, that you're going to have to look at about another 8 players who can't kick the ball particularly well. So, like most coaches will say, one of the key indicators of our success is actually winning the ball at the source. And what Elijah does well, he wins the ball at the source. He's got beautiful hands, sees the spacing around him really well, usually distributes well. So hopefully he can hang on to some reasonably high midfield minutes, because he's not going to do it as a half forward. He's not going to do it as a half back. He's a genuine inside extractor. Really pleased to see that one.
How well do you reckon Cosy Pickett's going? I mean, that tackle on Kako, he was the one that tried to fly the flag. He didn't get enough support, but he's having a brilliant year, isn't he, for the Demons?
Yeah, fantastic year. He'll be one that you have a little. If the D's go all right this year, you'd have a couple of bucks on him for the Brownlow down. I reckon Gawn will get a bunch, but I reckon Pickett might just keep you interested for a top 5 finish or something, Dan.
Now, Thursday night, gather round started. Adelaide needed a win. Carlton needed a win. It was high scoring early. The Blues got off to a good start, but again, they had that period where there was a lack of concentration and the Crows blew them away. But what I liked about Carlton was it was a better performance. They finished pretty well, and they should take something out of that as they take on Collingwood, who, as we know, can't kick a goal. This becomes a huge match between 2 traditional rivals. The loser will be in real trouble. Better performance by Carlton, but again, they didn't get the 4 points. And Adelaide, well, they were okay. I mean, they had a great period, as I said, in the second quarter, but they found a way to win the Crows and stay in contention.
Yeah, well, look, if you're a Blues supporter, you'd be sort of like, all right, that was better. I'll watch them again. Their efficiency was only just 2% off the Crows, so they weren't far off in that. They weren't efficient inside 50, which was a real letdown for them once the ball got inside 50. But some of their stoppage stuff was good, Dan. Clearances, centre clearances, and general stoppage work. They actually beat the Crows around the ground and a little bit inside. And I guess one of the other areas was their tackle count. They won the tackle count. So definitely some KPIs there that you can tick and say, hey, boys, remember last week we won X amount. This week we've improved. We've won another 4 or 5 KPIs. So we're building, we're getting better. But Carlton are just genuinely, they're a 2.5 quarter team still, aren't they, Dan? They just don't know if it cannot possibly be fitness, because most of these teams are doing very similar programs, running similar programs over the summer. So there's a talent depth gap for sure, and obviously they lost a few players, so they need to try and fill that void. But there's some coaching question marks as well on the Blues, but yeah, signs of life, which for a Carlton supporter, you'd just be clinging onto for dear life. I'm enjoying watching how bad they are, but as an Essendon supporter, but my father-in-law and brother-in-law, they're mad Carlton, and we both talk about how trash we are at the moment and how sad it is. So as for the Crows, I think I wrote on my rap, Dan, and I think you nailed it. I reckon their best is good enough to compete with the top few. I don't think they can win a premiership,
No.
but I think there's a gap there. I think their best and worst still has a gap. And I'll reference Ben Keys. I reckon he's been off the boil a bit this year, but on the weekend he got going again. There's a bit of X factor and a bit of swagger, and people go, "Oh, why do you think Keys?" But they brought in Alex Neil-Bullen from Melbourne, and guess what role they play? They play
Similar
very
role.
similar.
They're sort of defensive forwards, aren't they?
Yeah, they get up the ground, they try and connect up, then they squirt forward and try and finish and put some frontal pressure on. So if I was Matty Nicks, I would be running them as a pair. I know this is strategy mind of mine thinking, how do I maximise both their talents? Because they both seem to be just going okay and flashing in and out of games. Neil-Bullen's a right footer, Keys is a left footer. I would be tempted to play them off as a pair and say, right, you're working that side of the ground and you're working that side of the ground. Once, let's say Keys gets up on his left side, Bullen, you slide in behind him, work the corridor on that right leg side, vice versa. When Neil-Bullen pushes up middle or up the right side, then Keysy, you slide in behind and try and get them working off each other a little bit more. And they might be doing that, but if that's not what they're doing, that'd be a little strategy or something I might consider working because they're very similar types.
Now, if Carlton were to lose to Collingwood this week, how much trouble would Michael Voss be in, even though their president, and this is often fraught with danger, has said he will last the whole year, Rob Priestley, before the season started?
I've got a feeling now, Dan, that there will be no coaches sacked this year.
I hope not.
I don't think one. I think they'll all get through to the end of the year. I think Graham Wright will. What do they gain by doing that? Is it who's out there now? If it's Adam Simpson, who sounds like he might be keen on the gig, well, let him just watch for the year and let him take a bundle of notes, and then if and when it happens, then he'll be ready to go. And I can't see Essendon doing it either. That extension plus how much we've been forking out in payments recently, I think they're going to stay the course. I think some clubs look at Hardwick at Richmond and juggling around the assistant coach as opposed to the senior coach and getting different support in there, which is I think Brad Scott could do with some really experienced assistant coaches with him, and I think that Vossi could be the same. The one thing I'd love to see from Vossi, Dan, what do you reckon it is?
Oh, that is better ball movement. He's absolutely obsessed with the contested ball, and the game has changed, and he still hasn't changed that much, has he, Brad?
And do you know how he's going to improve that? He needs to go and coach up in the coach's box.
Yeah.
He needs to get up above the game and say, right, why are we disconnecting? Why are we moving the footy there? How come he kicked the footy there? That's not what I want. Because like you said, he promotes beast footy. That's his go-to. He was a beast, so he promotes that. And that's what he learnt up at Brisbane. But he needs to go up in the bloody box, Dan. And someone needs to grab him and say, get up in the box and have a look at the team from above, please. It frustrates me.
Josh Carr does the same. He's only just started his coaching career. I couldn't believe that. And the first game at which North Melbourne beat them comfortably, I thought he was rabbit in the headlights. I'm thinking, Josh, what are you doing? You were running the show last year while Kent was on the boundary, providing them with great support and obviously leading by example with his wonderful leadership skills. But he earned the right after more than 10 years of coaching. You've got to be in the box, particularly early days of your coaching career, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. You need to be up in the box and you need to be hearing what the assistants are saying so that you make sure that everyone's on the same page, because that can be part of the problem. I mean, if the assistant coaches are up there making all the moves and basically, sending all the messages, Fossey might hear something he doesn't like and say, hang on, boys, that doesn't mesh with our thinking. And that's not what we talked about on Wednesday night or in our pre-game. I just don't think he's privy enough to the communication and the conversations in the box, and that it could be that simple. And then when they go and put the headphones on and they standing there watching the game with the headphones on, trying to multitask while listening and watching, I mean, it diminishes both those senses. So I would just love him to next week just be up front and centre in that box and saying, rightio, boys, give it to me. Let's find out why we only a 2.5 quarter team.
And Craig McRae and Chris Fagan do it with a lot of success, don't they? Simon Goodwin, I didn't think had a lot of success with it, but it works for McRae and Fagan, but it doesn't work for others. Why do you think that's the case, Brad?
It's a fabulous question. I'm not sure of the answer, but ooh, yeah, I don't know. It's just the personality and how they see the game. I guess they all do trust their assistant coaches.
Yes.
Um, However, I think when you haven't got the runs on the board like Vossi, then change it up a bit. Vossi hasn't got the runs on the board. Fagan has. Fly came in and got runs on the board early. Um, yeah, I'm quite passionate about it. I mean, you and I calling from the van on the weekend, and
Yes.
we're like, imagine being up on the roof watching this game down, being able to call it. We'd be able to see it so much better.
I
Um,
agree.
it's
Yeah, you
just
can't
crazy that.
you can't see it on those big grounds. I mean, what can McRae see? What can Fagan see? But obviously, their coaches are talking to them in their ears. But every other coach is in the box. I've never seen Beveridge at ground level. I've never seen Nix at ground level. Chris Scott's been coaching forever. He doesn't go on the ground. His brother Brad doesn't do it either.
Well,
Andrew
you see,
McLaughlin
Chris.
started his career as well.
Yeah, I mean, Sam Mitchell, Chris Scott, they're always in conversation with their assistant coaches and
Yes,
being able to get the best solution. You know, what do you think? What's the solution here? All right, you want to take him off or you want to do this? Tell me what the solution is. And they get the solution they want and they're all in together on it. And there's no miscommunication or mismessaging and or mixed messaging. Anyway, that'll be my message to Vossi as a coach.
just before I let you go for Dashing Dan Sporting Adventures, you can get our podcast on all relevant social media platforms and Spotify. This is View from the Art, looking at round 5 with Brad Canavan and our new sponsor, Desporto, where Italy comes alive on a plate, forged from Nonna's Kitchen, made with southern soul and love. And they've got outlets in many parts of the western suburbs and also in Essendon. They've got a Gelato Desporto at Yarraville and a Bottego Desporto, which is a wine bar in Yarraville as well. And they've got stores in Williamstown, Yarraville, and they've got a magnificent kiosk, which does great business, especially in the warm weather on Williamstown Beach. Brad, how do you reckon Gather Round's going? Peter Malinauskas didn't get his deal, which was a 5-year deal, so they can put together another ground, which would be at Wine Country, McLaren Vale. I think it's been an outstanding success so far.
I reckon it's super. I was planning on going over and I had tickets to the Essendon game and didn't quite eventuate. So would have loved to have been there. I think their numbers this year were the best ever, 270,000 across the games. I think I was listening to Jared Waitley quickly and I think he nailed it. I think they've got to get that fixture right though. They need a blockbuster on the Friday night. They need like a special guest performance at halftime to razzle dazzle it up another notch. I like Port Adelaide alternating front end, back end games. You need to get, teams like Geelong onto the big stage, Brisbane and Sydney onto the big stage. A couple of big clashes on a Friday night, and the other one I was talking about, Dan.
Yeah,
because it's school holidays. What's the capacity of even having because there's plenty of people over there to have a Friday 3-10 game.
and then a Friday night game as well.
Yeah.
Well, they could do that. They have 2 on a Saturday, don't they? They have that game at Norwood in between. That Essendon, Melbourne, and then Bulldogs and Hawthorn, and had the game in between at Norwood, didn't they? So, and that seems to work. They've been doing that for the 4 years. You're right about the fixture. They weren't magnificent games, were they, on paper, bar, of course, the game between Gold Coast and Sydney. That wasn't even at Adelaide Oval, and Hawthorn and the Western Bulldogs were still to win in Gather Round. You're right. I mean, the good teams have got to play at the Adelaide Oval, which they say is a magnificent deck. I mean, Angus Brayshaw in that game in the wet, when Freo got over the line, he said, this is just a great deck. And it still was a great deck when St Kilda had played Port by Sunday night.
Dan, you know better than I. Which other SANFL grounds have hosting capacity, or is Norwood the only one that really has reasonable hosting capacity?
Well, Norwood's small, Brad, but the reason why they hold it at Norwood is they've got the Food and Wine Festival on Sunday. So they can take advantage of that in regard to the tourism side of why Peter Malinauskas is so keen on Gather Round in the long term. I think Unley, the home of Sturt, has one ground they could look at. Adelaide's new home is Thebarton, the old West Torrens ground. They've, of course, merged with Woodville. So why not make that a bigger ground and a ground they could use to play matches. There's even Elizabeth, which is out in the northern suburbs. It's not a great spot, but it's a big ground. Central District's there. So there are certainly options, but I would have thought Unley, right in the middle of Adelaide, it's a very affluent suburb, is one that they could certainly look at with a very proud history like Norwood.
I think there's scope to do a lot of things over there, and maybe Malinauskas, because he's a bit of a forward thinker, and obviously he's very popular over there, that he's got really grand, big plans, whereas the AFL need to take into consideration of not just South Australia, they need to consider many more things and the factors with Tassie coming in and things like that. So imagine a gather round in Tassie with their 3 or 4 really good ovals down there. That'd be a good one too, wouldn't it? Something different.
Well, I think Tassie might get it. There might be a deal where South Australia get it for the next 5 years, and Tassie, with their first year in the comp, may get it for 1 year, just to obviously promote the team and promote footy, even though it's a big footy state. No, I think that would work well too. Now, Friday night's a strange fixture this week for round 6. Why would you have 2 blockbuster games, the Bulldogs and Geelong at Gardenia Park, and then that's starting at 10 to 7, and then starting a half an hour later is the Battle of the Bridge? I mean, they don't get the fixture right, the AFL, do they?
Is it just computer-generated nonsense? Like, sometimes you've got to have a little bit of human intervention and say, that is illogical. That makes absolutely no sense. That is sheer and utter stupidity. And for someone like you and I, Dan, who are footy nuffies, that's annoying.
It certainly is. I mean, there's some big games this week. I mean, Geelong and the Bulldogs, you think Geelong will win for Mark Blitzavs in his 300th. They've got a very good record against the Bulldogs at Gardenia Park. And as you say, the Battle of the Bridge, big game for the Giants. If they can knock off the Swans, they get themselves back on track. But if they lose, they'll be 3 games behind the Swans and 2 and 4 and chasing the season.
They will. We'll go the Cats, obviously, down there. And like you said, I'm bullish on the Giants when they're healthy. So right at the moment, they're just not healthy. So you'd still favour the Swans, but I would like to see the Giants at least cover the line.
A flukish chance, the Bombers against Gold Coast? And is this, looking at it from the other angle, a banana peel for the Gold Coast, who I think have to win every game at home this year to be right in the mix?
I think the Suns will bounce back. Some of their stats in their game weren't too bad, but the Bombers might have a little drop off after that big one. But again, this is where we'll see the growth of Essendon. Yeah. We'll see if it's that new sort of Bomber brand and whether that can stand up against the Suns, and keep an eye on selection and integrity of selection and some of that positional change stuff. So have they got the kahunas, so to speak, Dan, to stay that little course that they're on at the moment? So, but I think the Suns.
One of the most interesting games, Melbourne play the MCG Wild, got a great record there this year, very exciting. They take on Brisbane, who won't be playing there a lot until the final, should they get there, which we think they will and will comfortably. Looking forward to this because I give Melbourne a chance, the way they're playing at the MCG.
I agree with you. This is my mate's cup, Dan. It's the Travis Johnston Cup. So he messaged me the other day. They got some sort of Melbourne fun day with all the kids there, and he's trying to get me to go with my son and a whole bunch of other people. So I said, I don't know, I might be in the van calling with Dan, and that's more important than that.
I don't know about that.
So, no, I expect the Lions to enjoy going back to the MCG. We know they love it. And but I'd be if I'm kingy, I'm hoping for a response, aren't I? So I think you'll get a response from the D's. First half will be well worth watching, but then Brisbane too strong late.
And North, who are inside the top 10 at the moment and quite comfortably, should be able to account for Richmond, shouldn't they? But again, this is another game that has danger written all over it, doesn't it?
This has danger written all over. This has got the Essendon Melbourne gather round vibes to it. So if Richmond are ever going to get themselves up and say, boys, look, North are, we're level pegging with North, and they've suddenly been able to bounce a little bit. Pardon the pun, because of the Kangaroos, but this is a game where the Tiger boys got to go, you know what, we're getting smashed in the media. Uze's getting questioned. So this will be close.
Yeah, I certainly think it will be. And, of course, the derby, West Coast and Freo. I think West Coast are playing pretty well in Perth. In fact, I know they are. bar the
Yep.
Sydney game. But I think Sydney are going to be pretty hard to beat everywhere, as we've mentioned, Brad. But I give West Coast some chance of being very competitive against Fremantle, and who knows? But the Dockers, I think, have a great list. They have no weaknesses anywhere. Like Brisbane, they're going to be a team that will be too good for West Coast. They wouldn't want to let this one slip, would they?
Well, I reckon we could take the quarter, half, three-quarter, end of game quad bet there, Dan, and we could nearly go West Coast to come out firing. Freo a little bit flat from spending a week over there in Adelaide. 2 tough, hard wins, a little bit flat going back home. So maybe West Coast, Freo. How's that sound?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it'll be a fascinating game, though. If West Coast can really be competitive, they haven't been competitive against Fremantle for a long time, it'll be a feather in their cap. Now, St Kilda, a little bit like Fremantle, staying over for a week in Adelaide. If I hear the commentators and the experts and the boundary riders ask Cal Wilkie, who's a South Australian, Wanganeen Millerer, and other guys, what they plan to do in Adelaide, I'll do a Terry Wallace and I'll spew up. I mean, they kept asking that. I mean, I wouldn't have thought Ross Lyon, being Ross Lyon, allowed them to do too much. Massive game against the Adelaide Crows, both 2 and 3. The winner will be back to equilibrium, 3 and 3, and the loser just behind the 8 ball, 2 and 4. So this is basically an 8-point game, isn't it?
8-point game for sure, Dan. I love the idea that they're staying away and just doing that. Like, I don't know if they've taken their golf clubs over, but swing the golf carts, get down to the beach, go and do a bit of sightseeing, take up some yoga, a bit of sightseeing, maybe go and do a lunch up in the Barossa, just break it up a bit, but then be serious when you get to your footy. And, I like the idea of both teams a bit mysterious. They're a bit mysterious. St Kilda gelling and building. Adelaide a little bit clunky and need to tighten up that gap between their best and the worst. So I'm going to go the draw.
You always have a draw, don't you? No matter what level of footy it is, Bradley. You sit on the fence, and we've got to pick those. What do you call it? Splinters out from your backside. But huge game on Thursday night. I think it should be held on the weekend. But then again, it is school holidays. I reckon they'll get over 80,000. Carlton, Collingwood. They generally do anyway, even when one of the two teams, which has been the case for a long time, has been struggling, and usually it's been Carlton. But this game is so important to both sides. Carlton are 1 and 4, Collingwood are 2 and 3, and obviously the loser almost out of contention, Brad.
Well, I think Carlton are out of contention anyway. I've sort of put a line through them. Collingwood hanging on for dear life. If Collingwood defend like they did over at Gather Round against who they play? Lost me train of thought.
Fremantle. Yeah.
If they defend that well and they come out with that tackle count, I think they'll be too strong, but they need to still do a little bit of tinkering. And I want, if you're listening to this unbelievable show, chuck Quainer in the middle. Give him a spin. Try it at training and see if you get something. They just need to find a couple of connection pieces centre forward to get a little bit more easier footy inside 50, Dan. So I give Collingwood a slight advantage.
Well, the Flyer's listening. He lives in Williamstown, so he's got to get down to the Williamstown store of Desporto, our new sponsor. Italians live life through their hands, and you'll taste every moment of it. Come join our family. And they have dine-in, takeaway, group bookings, functions, and catering. And a shout-out to Antoinetta and Claude, the hosts. Claude gets up at 4 o'clock every morning and makes the dough. He's an absolute sensation. He makes every decision on what they cook, and they get all their ingredients, or most of them anyway, from Italy. It's a magnificent place. Now, the other game in the round is Hawthorn and Port. You'd expect the Hawks to win comfortably, and if results go their way, they'll be on top of the table. 5 wins in a row.
Yeah, look, there's a lot of interest in Hawthorn, and that they're just clicking into gear like the mean machine. Remember them, Dan, the swimmers?
Correct.
And, they're like that. They're just well oiled, and can they sustain it for a whole season? That's going to be challenging. They'll have challenges around that. But I have interest in Port too, because, like I said, they're a roller coaster team, and as long as we see some, number one, you've got to see effort, and then we want to see some system and a bit of efficiency from those Port guys, because there's a lot of them playing some good footy, And obviously there'll be a big watch on the Zachy Butters case as well. So, Hawks will cover the line in the end, probably easily, but hopefully we see a bit from Port.
Now, Jack Lukosius was a very high draft pick. He's been disappointing, hasn't he? Of all those guys, and three of them went to Gold Coast. Rankin was one of them, Ben King the other, and very, very high in the top 5. He's been really disappointing, hasn't he?
He's frustrating, isn't he? He comes across laconic, and footy's not the be-all and end-all for him. It's like he could nearly pack up his suitcase and go and travel the world, and he's got that vibe about him. So, but went on, he's such a magnificent kick, and he's a smooth mover, and we talk about, and we've mentioned a lot tonight about connection pieces. Like, he's a perfect connection piece for those guys coming out of half back, just to be able to see him, because he's rangy and he's a good mark, and he can turn on his leg, and that gives. As soon as he turns on his leg, the forwards will lead with absolute authority because they know he's a beautiful kick. So he's so important, and at the moment, he doesn't realise how important he is. He's got to realise how important he is and insert himself in the game more often.
Bradley, great to catch up with you. You are an encyclopedia when it comes to knowledge of the game, the tactics. Love working with you when it's in the MPFNL, and also love you having part of this program. Would love to have you on again throughout the year, Dashing Down Sporting Adventures, and looking, of course, at a round of footy every week, reviewing it on a Monday, which we then post on a Tuesday. It's called View from the Outer. Thanks to Joanne, who puts it all together. And you can catch this podcast and all my podcasts, Dashing Down Sporting Adventures, on Spotify and all social media platforms. And great to have Desporto and the team involved. Remember, their outlets are at Williamstown, Yarraville, Essendon, the kiosk on Williamstown Beach. They've also got a gelato store, Desporto in Yarraville, and Bottega Desporto Wine Bar in Yarraville. You can dine in, take away, group bookings, functions and caterings, and all the footy clubs do tend to use their food as well. Thanks, Bradley. We'll catch up again very soon. Yes, mate.
Hey, Dan, just before you go, you rarely get anything wrong, but I'm going to get you on one tonight.
Yeah, go on.
2 premierships for me.
2?
Bentley and Chelsea United.
Didn't I call you a premiership coach? Doesn't that mean multi-premierships?
Oh, you just mentioned one. I just thought if you're going to get me on the show and give me free pizza, you might as well mention both flags.
Have you got a favourite pizza before we go?
Oh, do you know what I'm into these days? Because we went over to the States, so I've gone pepperoni mad, but I always add a few things.
Yes.
I like a bit of funk on it with a bit of garlic and onion and capsicum, bit of pepperoni.
Well,
and
they can do
pepperoni.
Yeah, it's beautiful over in America. But, I mean, I don't like their size of their pizzas. I mean, this is beautiful pastry. The pastry's absolutely
you need a solid crispy crust. In America, you go to bite the bloody thing and it's all over your T-shirt, so you got to be careful over there. But a bit of pepperoni with some add-ons, and yes, mate. Oh, great to be on your show. Thanks for having me for starters,
Pleasure.
and I've really enjoyed. I love talking footy with you. We're mad for it, and hopefully I've been able to add some value for you, buddy.
And we'll do it again soon. Brad Canavan joining me on Dashing Down Sporting Adventures for Desporto, and of course our weekly segment on the AFL, and it's called View from the Outer. We'll catch you again